It was exactly 1 week into the semester, and Harry had already moved all of his things into an abandoned tower and had found a place to practice his aim. He no longer slept in the Gryffindor Tower, not after he found a house elf going through his trunk on Dumbledore's orders. He had learned from the second year not to keep anything valuable in his trunk. It was all in his bag, which he kept on him at all times. His trunk was just for school and easily replaced if necessary. Harry fully believed in being prepared, and part of that meant being ready to leave the school without notice. It wasn't like he would miss school after all, and he already had everything he needed to live in the real world as he liked to think of it. Umbridge looked at the Gryffindor fifth years with barely contained glee. Potter was missing, and it gave her a reason to give him detention without coming up with something. "Where is Mr. Potter?" she asked sweetly. It was enough to make the children gag. "He said he wasn't going to waste time with someone who obviously had no idea what they were doing," answered Hermione. "He is not a ministry-approved teacher, and he has no excuse not to be in class," said Umbridge primly. "Considering you aren't even going to let us practice spells, I can see why he decided it wasn't worth his time," said Ron loudly. "Detention, Mr. Weasley," said Umbridge primly, then added, "and a week's worth of detentions for Mr. Potter when I get my hands on him." What she didn't count on was Harry borrowing one of the old brooms and using the Alohomora charm to get to class and avoid her. Since he didn't sleep in the Gryffindor Tower anymore and had the Marauders map, it was impossible for her to find him. And the fact he started to order food to come to his room direct made it very hard to catch him that way. In fact, it took 3 days for Hermione to successfully catch him in the library, and that was because she had gotten a permission slip from McGonagall to the restricted section. "Yo! What's up, Hermione?" "What's up is that the toad bitch is torturing students with an illegal quill." Ron came back from his detention with words written in his own blood on his hand, "and I know she's been putting first years through the same thing," said Hermione. "Ah. I had hoped that she would spend all year trying to catch me instead, but apparently, she's a multitasker," said Harry irritated. "What do you plan to do?" "Well, considering McGonagall gave me the permission to play my new favorite game called Avoid the Toad, there's only one thing I can do." "And that is?" "Call in the expert." "Who?" "Hey kid, was wondering if you were going to call me or not," said Loki far too cheerfully for Hermione's sanity. "Hey, Loki. Got a special case for ya. There's a woman in this castle torturing children with an illegal quill, and she doesn't seem to be falling for my little game of cat and mouse. I heard stories from the other hunters that you have this habit of dealing with people like that, and I figured you would have an idea of what to do with her," said Harry. "Damn. How old are these kids?" 11, and she seems to be targeting those of non-magical birth or anyone who disagrees with the ministry," said Hermione. "Her name wouldn't happen to be Dolores Umbridge, would it?" "How did you know?" asked Harry. "Was wondering when I would get a chance to deal with her." "Or Snape really," said Loki with a shrug. "Umbridge is a bigger problem than Snape," said Hermione. "I'll help. Just one question," said Loki. "I'll buy out their stock of chocolate frogs and not give you any cockroach clusters," said Harry immediately. "Actually, I was going to ask, where do I sleep?" "I want to have fun with this," said Loki. "Oh, you can share my room." "Not like I really use all that empty space," said Harry. "What do you mean your room?" "You sleep with the others in the tower," said Hermione. "Not since the first week I haven't. Do you think I enjoy listening to Ron snoring like a damp bear every night? I swiped one of the unused towers and moved everything into one of the rooms. Shouldn't be too hard to get an extra bed in there," said Harry. "That actually explains a lot," said Hermione, thinking it over. She had wondered why Umbridge hadn't tried to get into the Gryffindor Tower or why she never saw Harry in the common room anymore. "You swiped an entire tower? Dude, toga party," said Loki with a grin. "How can we have a toga party without the Toad finding out I'm no longer protected by the Gryffindor Tower and the portrait? Damn. On the other hand, I do have an extra laptop with internet connection." "Dibs," said Loki. "Harry, why haven't you gotten me one yet?" asked Hermione a little too sweetly. Both Loki and Harry cringed in unison. A tone that sweet always spoke of trouble for the one they had their attention on. "As I said before, Hermione, I'm getting you one for your birthday. Hell, I'm paying 100 extra galleons to make sure it's state-of-the-art." Harry had paid for what was considered the standard laptop. That was 500 galleons easy. What he was getting for Hermione was more expensive but had far more features to it. It would also come with the password to his satellites, which was something he offered to magical as well as hunters. It had already paid off what he spent on his laptop once the Japanese learned what he had in mind. Not having to work through miles for their internet was something they could live with. "Are you sure that's what he said? He took over a tower?" said McGonagall. "He was very clear on this point. He found a tower that wasn't being used and used a cleaning charm to get into it. According to him, he found a house elf going through his trunk the first week into the year and didn't want to repeat. Something I find hard to believe, as I know for a fact he carries everything important to him in that bag of his after what happened in the second year." Considering the books he read, McGonagall wasn't surprised. It would be a bad thing indeed if a Slytherin loyal to Voldemort got his hands on some of the books Harry tended to read. Particularly the demon summoning books, which Harry found by accident in the restricted section. He had come to her 3 weeks into this semester with an offer. He would take the books off the shelves and place them somewhere that they couldn't be used for the war or where the Ministry could get their hands on them. He also offered an unbreakable vow never to use the information for personal gain. Considering he was the current expert on demonology in the castle and knew far more about them than she did or ever will, she consented. Harry immediately sent them to Bobby Singer in America, who could possibly put the information to good use. It was more of the exchange really, as Harry then replaced the books with copies of some Bobby had. After he made copies of his own. He wasn't an idiot. "By the way, who was that boy talking to Harry at lunch today?" "Which one?" "The silver-eyed one. I noticed him on the way to the staff table," said McGonagall. "Probably Loki. I wouldn't put it past Harry to slip him some de-aging potion just so he could annoy the Toad further," said Hermione unconcerned. Aside from being a bit of a pervert and having the worst sweet tooth she had ever encountered, he would give her parents conniption fits with his eating habits. He was decent enough. He just had an odd sense of humor which she could overlook after years of exposure to the Weasley twins. McGonagall paled. "Loki, as in the Loki? Remember all those bizarre pranks in the Order? That was him working with the twins," shuddered Hermione. "Oh, Merlin, no," whimpered McGonagall, before she did something to shock Hermione. She took out a bottle of good scotch and took a long pull. "That bad?" asked Hermione. "Worse. His father was one of the worst pranksters this school has ever known, easily outdoing the twins," said McGonagall, before she asked the question, "How did Harry summon Loki anyway? I thought that pantheon died out with the Vikings." According to Harry, he knew Loki's original name, and he stole one of Fork's tail feathers along with some unicorn tail. Though why he would need those to summon a Norse god I have no idea. "This a private session or can anyone join?" asked Harry with a grin. "How long have you been there?" shrieked Hermione. "Since McGonagall actually brought out the liquor." "Relax, Professor, I only brought Loki in to deal with the Toad. Besides, Loki won't hurt any of the students. At least none that don't really deserve it really. He has a history of humiliating or dealing with people who need a wake-up call on morals," said Harry. He isn't going to kill anyone, is he? Demanded McGonagall. Bitch, possibly, but from what I understand of his methods he'll learn more towards traumatizing the really bad cases first. Don't be surprised if Snape suddenly has a change of heart from being a complete bastard after Loki's through with him, said Harry. Harry, I've been meaning to ask ... just how is Loki still around if the Norse pantheon was disbanded centuries ago? Asked Hermione. He's only a god by a technicality. He was originally something else. He just got a few extra powers when he took on the name Loki, said Harry. If Hermione wanted to know Loki's original name, she would have to do the research on her own. Though it would be amusing to see her reaction to it. And some of the more religious students. Specifically the Catholic and Christian ones. The second Fred and George learned Loki was in fact in Hogwarts, they all but begged Harry to join in on their pranks. Loki actually laughed when he heard they sacrificed a rubber chicken in his honor when they learned he was in the school. So Fred, George, do you two know how to use occlumency? Loki's mentioned it but I really don't want to deal with Snape just to learn it, asked Harry. Of course we know it, said Fred. How could we prank Snape if we didn't? Said George. Thank God ... No offense Loki. None taken. Well, if you two can get Harry up to speed on how to protect your mind, I'll let you in on a real secret. What secret? They asked. What his real name is. I only heard it from another hunter, who had a run-in before and went looking on how to deal with him permanently, said Harry. Greg. I loved the look on his face when he heard who I really was, said Loki grinning evilly. I heard he went to the first bar he could and got shit-faced drunk, cackled Harry. Loki snickered and munched on another chocolate frog. Like Harry promised, he bought out Honeyduke's supply of chocolate frogs ... and then had a mini war with Loki over who got what card. It took Harry exactly a month, by which time Halloween had come and gone, not that he cared ... Loki had beaten Ron at a sugar-eating contest to the shock of the others and horror of Hermione, to master occlumency. Harry went dressed as an angel to make Loki laugh. It had taken the twins 2 days to get over the fact that Loki, the god of trickery from the Norse pantheon, was, in fact, an archangel from Christian, Catholic mythology ... specifically the angel Gabriel. Though at least now they had an answer to why Harry had asked him for angel glyphs. Umbridge was trying to figure out who the silver-eyed boy in Gryffindor was. He had appeared without warning and she knew he wasn't a real student. Asking the blood traitor Weasley had come up with nothing, to her annoyance. And Granger proved to be too much of a rulemonger to actually do anything that would earn detention to her disgust. She would have loved to hear that mudblood cry from her special quills. As she was daydreaming about that, she failed to notice the sound of wings, or that she had fallen into a rather nasty illusion. Later, when the ministry officials came to investigate, they would find the woman acting like a werewolf during the full moon, only there was no sign of infection. It was baffling. Students, it is with great regret that I inform you Professor Umbridge has been removed for. The students cheering covered up what he said, as they were just glad that Toadbitch, Umbridge was the main favorite, was finally gone. To the great shock of the staff, several Gryffindors, Ravenclaws, and Hufflepuffs started to carry Harry off on their shoulders. Why are they carrying Mr. Potter off? Asked Dumbledore in genuine confusion. Flitwick snorted in amusement, as did Sprout. Because statistically speaking, the odds of it being Potter's doing are 100 to 1 in his favor, said Flitwick. What was the pool up to? Asked McGonagall, to the shock of Dumbledore. 100 to 2 in favor of him actually summoning something to deal with the bitch, 50 to 1 that he does it himself, said Sinistra. Minerva then revealed something they hadn't known. Mr. Potter summoned Loki the trickster to deal with her about a month in, she said smugly, holding out her hand. Damn it, you knew he summoned something, said Babbling, the professor in charge of runes. Harry was an unofficial student of hers. Granger told me when I asked her who he was, said McGonagall. It looks like they're carrying off that silver-eyed fellow too, said Snape. Harry broke on who helped him, guessed McGonagall. Isn't he the same one who beat Ronald Weasley at an eating competition on Halloween? Asked Sprout. According to Harry, Loki has a massive sweet tooth. He would likely eat an entire dish of the headmaster's favorite lemon drops without hesitating, said McGonagall. She neglected to mention that it was unlikely any potions or spells would stick to him. Dumbledore watched as the students thanked the two profusely and felt a small amount of disappointment. No one had carried him off like that when he defeated Grindelwald, and yet all Harry had done was summon Loki and gotten rid of a horrid woman. Life just wasn't fair sometimes.